What do you see how the running backs look like they're getting a little bit more comfortable with their roles?
Oh yeah, I think they are. I think it's different than anybody else. You're a great player. Great players always want the ball in their hands, and I think both of those players are exceptionally strong runners, and they both want the ball. We got one ball out there at one time, but we're trying to do what we can to try to get the ball in their hands in other ways as well. And I think you kind of saw that this past week with spreading it out a little bit and trying to get those guys involved in the pass game.
Does this talk about that aspect of it, the fact that the receivers, the three running backs caught, 17 balls or something like that this week?
Close to.
Which is a high number,
sure.
And are you thinking in terms of them as receivers more than just running backs?
No, I think what you do is whenever you're putting your offense together, it ain't no different here than it has been anywhere else. And you put up on the board, you list your players down, and you find out which ones are your playmakers, and you try to figure out how we can get those guys the ball. So if if you're playing checkers, we want to try to get our checkers on the best possible position. So we can move our guy around and get mismatches, and that's what we're trying to do.
Is there something lacking in the receiving corps before you have to do that, or is that not what?
No, I don't think so. I think what we did is we just made an emphasis on trying to get. We try to get the tailbacks a little bit more involved in what we're doing. The receivers are all active as far as what we're doing in the pass game. It's just a matter of, you can drop a pass play, and say this is what you'd like it to happen, but it's got to be based on what the coverage is given to you. So you always have to have an out on both sides. You have to have an out for man coverage, zone quarters, zone halves, zone thirds, and no deep. So you have to have something built in where the quarterback knows, listen, I know if they're playing this coverage, have them out here. They were playing a quarters type look, and they kept giving us the drives, and that's kind of what we did. If they had given us a different look, we would have probably been to a different position.
You always hear about people wondering why the tight ends aren't more involved in the pass game. Any thoughts that you have on that subject?
Oh no, we're still working on that. Like I said, it's no different than what I just finished saying. As far as based on what they're giving us in the coverage, we'll kind of get them in. I mean, they're involved. It's just a matter of based on what the coverage is giving us. We're going to go to a different out based on the coverage.
Is there any greater concerns about holding the tight ends into block if your line isn't given the protection you want?
Well, I think first and foremost we just got to shore up the things. We got to get better all the way around on the offensive side. And one of the things we talked about is trying to make sure our quarterbacks are protected. I know that we've given up some numbers in sacks and hits, and we're working on that right now. Are there different ways to implement as far as either bringing a guy in or being more of an I-back type set? Yeah, there's a bunch of different ways, and we're working up that upstairs right now as we'll finish practice here, and we'll go upstairs and we'll talk about it a little bit more. But that's a concern of ours.
What about Davis, John Davis? Any thoughts about trying to get him the ball more? Or
I think he's I think he's one of those guys when you start talking about when you put him up on the board, what players are guys that can make plays, and he's proven that he can make some plays. Obviously, I think it was the first week we moved him around. He played some tailback for us. He had a big game, and again, it's just we've got to do a good job of being able to shore up what we want to do on the offensive side based on what the defense is giving us. You can't take too much, but you can't take too little, and you have to make sure you have enough based on what the defense is giving you. And again, we've got to do a good job of trying to get our playmakers the ball. But yes, he is a guy that we'd like to get the ball to as well.
Thanks, Coach.
Yes, sir.
What do you lose when Wilson's hurt? Is he like your best blocker among the tight ends?
He's the biggest guy we have at the tight end position. You first and foremost, you lose a senior and you lose leadership. I talked to Evan this weekend, and that was the first game that he's ever missed here. So for him, he was struggling a little bit with it. But you lose a guy that's a big, strong guy at the point of attack, at the line of scrimmage. I think that when you start putting together, you piece together what are you going to do. Well, he was that guy for us right now, and so what you try to do is try to do the same stuff, but you move guys around to be able to put them in a position where you can help them out, make that point of attack block.
Is he back this week?
He was out there. He's running around right now. Yeah.
Josh Ferguson, is he your best receiver?
I think Josh is one of the most electric players we have on the offensive side of the ball. I agree with that. To say he's the best, I don't know about that. But I mean, when you start talking about guys that you want to have the ball in their hands, he's one of them by all means.
And Donovan's done a really good job of that as well.
I-
Is that in the game plan? Just to
I think both those guys are both strong runners, and whenever they can get the ball in their hands, you know. And the thing about them is it's like anybody else. They want the ball. Good players want the ball in their hands. So you know, we've got to do a good job, and ultimately they've got to do their responsibilities too. They got to hold on to the ball. They got to make sure they're blocking when they need to block. And but fundamentals, we always talk about relying back on your fundamentals. So, but yeah.